Um, for the sake of today's conversation, let me just say this. A huge part of my work and the work that I do, the two roles that I play, a huge part of those roles depends on research. Like, I really have to research, I have to read and write a lot. Um, and, that takes a lot of time, and, it's reading many articles, everything here and there. But lately, I've been learning how to use a number of AI tools just to make my work simple. And let me tell you, it is crazy interesting. Crazy interesting. Because I've just come to this point of discovering that maybe what used to take me 3 hours to do now can take me about, 30 minutes, an hour max, because of using these tools here and there. I don't want to get into the details and all of that. And so I've just realized that nowadays I am so excited to like research, because I'm like, hey, don't it to me AI. Like, let's go and explore what this tool is going to come up with. It's very exciting because it's new and it's still funky and all that. But why I'm telling you this story is because I've just realized that nowadays, so that I'm not even like, my first response is not even to think about the topic of research, or to think about the question that I need to answer, or to think about the propositions that I need to make. My first thing now is not even to think, it's not to engage my mind, it's actually to go to these tools. And they become like what I'd call my first response, right? This psalm that we're reading today, which is Psalm 77, is a psalm that just makes you and I pause and be like, what's your first response like? Okay, let me read two verses for us and then we'll continue. Verse 1 and 2 of Psalm 77. That's where we're at here at Reflections by Wakeji today. And it says this: I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. Here's a question I'd like to ask you. When life is distressing, when life hits a wall, when you're going through tough times in your life, what is your first response? Okay? This psalm in verse 2, it's telling us, when I was in distress, I sought the Lord. The psalmist, and that's Asaph who wrote this psalm, is like clear in his mind, is like, me when I'm in distress, the first thing I do is I search for God. I go to God with my distress, right? And that's the question that I'd like to ask you today. What is your first response when you're distressed? Yeah, I think for many of us, myself included, there's probably a group of friends or a number of pals that are the first people to turn to or call. Maybe there's, you're like me and you're distressed and you're like, I have all these apps, let me see which one can save me, and sometimes we do not even pray about the things that we are going through because of the tools and the things around us that we can quickly respond to and through. Yeah? Is God your first response? Is God the first place you run to when things are thick? Because that really shows you what your relationship with Him is like. Okay? The first response, the first thing you turn to when things are thick, that thing, or that relationship should be questioned, especially if it is not the Lord. Yeah? Is prayer your first response? Is turning to God to cry out to Him your first response? Like the psalmist tells us here. And really and honestly, and let me speak to the men listening to this podcast, the people, a majority or mostly all of the people who wrote these psalms were men. And so sometimes when we read it and we say, I cried out to God for help, I cried out to God to hear me, you're like, staki kulialia. No. The thing is, even us, it's not a portion or a show of strength. Like, not turning to God is not a show of strength. It is actually a show of submission and trust. It is a show of surrender before God. It is a show of the priority and the place where we've put our relationship with God, that we can turn to Him first when things are not going well. Yeah, we ask a lot of ourselves a lot of questions. We go through seasons where we feel like, okay, Is God really hearing me? And that's the thing about prayer. You're like, I don't know if God has heard. A matter of fact, if I read verse 6 to 7 of this, you will see that even though this psalmist turned to God, he was asking himself questions. And these are the questions. I remember my songs in the night, verse 6. My heart meditated and my spirit asked, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? And you can see that this guy, even though this is his first response, he's asking questions like, where is God? Where is God? As in, I'm not seeing and feeling him coming through as quickly as I want him to in the distress that I am. But that did not stop him from turning to God. It did not stop him from turning to God in the midst of his most difficult moment. He still turned to God. Even though he could feel like God was moving fast enough, he's asking, has God forgotten to be merciful? Where is he? Why has he withheld his compassion? It didn't stop him from turning to God. And I think this is an encouragement and a challenge to you and I. Where do you turn to? What is your first response? Is it God? What is it that has replaced that place of God in your life, especially when things are going not so good? Find that thing, and I pray for you and I pray for myself today that our first place of response, our first place where we run to, as a matter of fact, the Bible says that the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run unto it and they are safe. I pray that that will be something you remember always when things are thick. Run to God first. Call to God first. Before you pick your phone to call anyone, call God. Before you think about your pals, talk to God. Before you think about the plan, some of us, when we're distressed, first we come up with a plan, and then now we go to God and we're like, okay, this is the plan of how we are getting out of this. No. Please hear me, child of God. Learn to run to God first. In the midst of your distress, run to God first. Let us not run to people before we run to God. Let us not run to our phones before we run to God. Let's not run to planning before we run to God. Let us put God on that throne, and every time something good happens, run to him in thanksgiving first. Every time something difficult and distressing happens, run to him and cry out to him. Let God always be your first response in all of these things. And in that way, may we be blessed. May we see the hand of God in our lives. May we feel the goodness of God in our lives and continue to glorify him forever. Have a great day. This is Reflections by Wakeji. Let's talk again in the next chapter of the Bible. Bye.